All right, so there was a video I was just doing where started playing with sticks, and I don't know if you could actually see that in the video because I actually didn't look to see if you could see what I was doing, and I got distracted during it. But what I was trying to do was this. As you can see, they are staying together, but these are all separate sticks. And I was failing because I didn't know how actually to do it, so I had to figure it out. But what I was trying to do is because I took these, I have these plants that had a bunch of what I noticed, very like easy to bend and also very straight, like shoots on them, and they need to be trimmed back because I don't want it to be just one straight thing. I want it to be more of like a bush. So I was trimming, so I did a bunch of trimmings, and then I was like, I wonder if I could use that for something. And so in my garden, I was thinking about doing little fences in my garden that I could potentially use for plants to use as like structure or something. Like, obviously I would make it taller than this if I was going to use it for something like beans or something along those lines. However, this is just a proof of concept. I was just kind of messing around with this. But I could put sticks, basically, research concluded the answer is yes, I can do it, and quite easily. So, mission accomplished with that. I also wanted to try and use it for making baskets. However, upon reflection and an attempt at doing this, I think that while I could potentially make some kind of basket from this, I don't think that using only these is the best way to go about it unless I use only the very thinnest of the cuttings that I have. Rather, what would be better is I use these as more of like the structure for the basket, and then I use something else to weave in between it, which I do have some vines that are pretty good, like some vine cuttings from, I think it's wisteria, that are pretty good for potentially weaving a basket. So maybe I'll use that for that. But yeah, so that's what I was doing. This is what it ended up as after I went back to it. So just showing that. But what I also actually threw it on the ground. But what I wanted to also highlight with this that I found interesting while I was doing this is that the concept of how this works, like basically creating a lattice or, weaving in general, like weaving a basket, weaving a blanket, the way that it works is really quite fascinating, right? Because these are all just individual sticks, right? All in here. But because they're all placed in here in alternating, they're all holding themselves together so that I don't actually need to hold any of them, and they all just are locked into place. And I find this very fascinating that this can happen, right? Because all of these sticks are just individual sticks. There's not actually anything like tying them down. There's no lashings that I had to put on it. They're all just kind of held in place by the fact that there's enough of them connected, right? If you only had 2 or 3 sticks, this doesn't happen, right? But as you add more and more sticks, the structure gets more and more rigid, and it becomes harder and harder to break it apart. And I find that very interesting and something to kind of, I guess, keep in mind, because that concept is something you can take beyond just weaving a basket or a fence or something along those lines. You can use that same principle for a lot of things, I think. I think it has a good amount of applications. And so just kind of thinking about how the more connections you make and the more links that you form, the stronger it becomes. And I think that is pretty cool. So, yeah, there's that. Peace out.